Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamu alaikum. Welcome to Perspective, and gosh, it's an absolute delight being with you once again right here in the studios and doing our show. On Perspective today, we're going to dedicate the show to the World Day of Remembrance for Road Traffic Victims, and we do know that this is a high-profile global event that honors the millions of people who have been killed or seriously injured in road accidents, and of course their families and communities also suffer the second-hand trauma of the victims of road accidents. Now, this particular day happens every third Sunday in the month of November. And if you're wondering why I'm doing the show today, well, I personally also had a bit of an accident in November, so I was incapacitated. And the coincidence is that I was meant to do this interview with Zwelethu Mazibuko, who is my guest this morning, in November. And a few days before the interview, I had my little accident. So, of course, I was convalescing, but I'm back, alhamdulillah, in the highest of spirits and in good health. But we're going to talk to someone who had a very, very bad road accident, how it's changed his life, the lessons learned, and the people that stood by him. And more importantly, a very strong message which we're trying to put out not only to all the senior citizens or all the very mature people who can make the right decisions by not drinking and driving or by not being reckless drivers, but very especially to our young adults who are rearing the 18-year-olds and the 14 and 15-year-olds who are already nagging their parents to start learning to drive so they can hit the road. Let's talk about all of those issues and how in your over-eagerness you can end a life, maybe your own or the opposite party's life, very, very tragically, and they and their loved ones would live with those very sad consequences for the rest of their lives. But let's get talking to Zwelethu Mazibuko, who was a victim of a horrific accident about 20 years ago. Am I right? Was it 20 years ago?
Yes, thereabouts.
Okay, a very good morning to you. Welcome to the program.
Very good morning to you, and a very good morning to your viewers. It's my honor, privilege, and blessing to be here this morning.
Believe you me, mine as well. I feel so blessed to be talking to you today because you have such an important story to share with us, and we hope and pray it gets across in a very strong way to people who are very reckless. You know, those people who have road rage and end up taking lives or injuring people, and other people have to live with those consequences for the rest of their lives. But the other coincidence for me is the fact that this interview was meant to happen in November.
Yes, it was.
And then I had my accident, and I kind of asked myself, what is the universe telling me? But, you know, thank God I've learned something from it, and I'm ready and raring to go. I'm still in convalescence, but really being able to get around. But your story, you talk about it all started and ended in an eternal instant. What do you mean by that?
Well, Julie, actually, when it actually happened, I remember I was on the way home from the television studio where I worked as a news anchor, and I was on the way home with my best man, as I was supposed to be getting married in the weeks following. And all I remember seeing as we were slowing down to a red traffic light was seeing headlights where they should not have been. And from what I'm told, a speeding driver had gone over the island and crashed head-on into our car. And that's when I remember feeling a deep sense of peace and feeling an eternal instant. I don't know if that makes any sense to yourself or the viewers, but that's what I felt. I felt like I could feel all of the universe in every direction in one singularity, if that makes any sense.
People often talk about in that moment, the moment that you experienced, and you kind of also in that instant wonder, is this where and how my life ends? That the entire life flashes in front of their eyes. Did that happen for you?
Actually, my only experience of when I was, actually just to rewind a little bit, after the crash, I went into a coma for several weeks. And I don't remember anything from being in a coma except for experiencing my grandmother begging God to trade her life for mine. Now, about 2 weeks after I came out of the coma, I was informed that my grandmother had passed away while I was in the coma. Now, there's a lot more to the story, actually.
Gosh.
And
you very nearly died in that horrific accident. Yes. A few weeks after the accident, you were meant to be getting married. That didn't happen.
No.
How did that impact on you? You know, you were half dead in the hospital. I mean, you're going to share all of those different operations and things that you'd undergone. But knowing that your fiancée then walked out on you at that time when you needed her most.
Well, Julie, I'm not a perfect man by any stretch of the imagination. As happens, sometimes each member of a marriage comes with their own issues, and sometimes we're not strong enough to handle them. And the marriage broke down, as you just said. And luckily for me, as we'll discuss later, that ended up being a blessing in some ways. Because after all of my incidents and my hospital stays and everything, I ended up meeting my current partner, who I used to work with back when I was a television anchor all of those years ago. And we ended up speaking randomly on social media and ended up getting together as partners after that. And she's currently now my fiancée.
So there's a blessing in every incident, positive or negative.
That's
so
true.
Thank God for that. Let's go to the time of your accident. You obviously were in a coma. You weren't aware of what was happening around you. But I understand that your dad and the family members came around and they were trying to resuscitate you. Your dad refused to give up, and he wouldn't let the paramedics give up on you.
Yes, Julie, just to rewind actually to that part of the story. At the scene of the crash, my heart ended up stopping. And then my best man, who was in the car with me, phoned my father to come to the scene. While he was there, the paramedics resuscitated me about 3 times, and that's the maximum amount of times that paramedics are allowed to defibrillate someone, or else they're just doing damage to the brain and to the body. But my father at the scene apparently said, no, keep working. My son is not dying here tonight. And my paramedics also had faith and kept working and defibrillated me another 4 or 5 times until my heart got going again. But now, that same evening, an evening that also happened to be my sister's birthday. It's a day that I'll never forget. Mm-hmm. August 29th. At the scene of the hospital where I was taken to, my heart stopped another 4 or 5 times. And actually, because the emergency room doctors did not have any idea how many times the paramedics had resuscitated me, they kept working. And I came back and was in a coma again, as you said, for those 3 weeks.
So from the start of your accident, right up to this point in time that you're sitting here in front of me,
yes,
it sounds like, though you were a victim of a horrific car accident, lots of little miracles were playing out in your life. Do you believe that? Do you firmly believe that there was miracles and God's work at play in your life?
Oh, definitely. I believe that God played a huge hand in this. When I was in hospital, because I had, at the scene of the accident, broken every bone on the right side of my body, I had a wound on the right side of my leg that refused to heal. And I'd had to go in and get dressing changes on my thigh. Now, a doctor who was not one of my doctors happened to be walking past one of the days when I was getting a dressing on my wound. And she stopped and said, "No, I actually recognize that smell." And she walked into my ward and said, "I recognize it. Get this man tested for this disease," as she scribbled down. So the nurses took the instructions to the lab, and it turned out that I tested positive for a disease called MRSA, methicillin-resistant Staphylococcus aureus, or as it's more commonly known, multi-drug resistant Staphylococcus aureus. Now, in layman's terms, that's a strong version of the Staphylococcus bug that lives on all of our skins, but when it gets into an open wound, it becomes lethal and flesh-eating. Now, because it's a very young bacterium, it's only existed for 30 or so years, I was very blessed that the world's expert and the doctor that has actually invented or developed the cure for this particular bug lived and worked right here in the same city as me.
Okay, we need to go for our first ad break. We're going to continue talking about the miracle of your survival. My guest is Mazibuko. We're talking World Accident Day, which of course happens in November, but we're doing it today because we were unable to do it at the time, but here we are sharing this amazing story and hopefully getting some very, very important and strong messages out to the young people in not only in our country, all around the world. We're talking road accidents. We're talking about the impact it has on you and your loved ones for the rest of your life, depending how serious the accident has been, depending also on the nature of your injuries and whether you can navigate through life thereafter. But more importantly, it also depends on your support system. And if you don't have that, then I don't think there's much hope that you can get through, recover from the accident, overcome the trauma, and move on. Those are the important issues, I guess, in any tragedy, whether it's a road accident or anything else that happens in your life. Our guest is Mazibuko. He is an ex-TV presenter himself. He's been on Carte Blanche and ENCA. But that very glamorous, wonderful life filled with promise was cut very short in, I'd say, the prime of his life. But here he is talking to us simply through the power of prayer and a very, very important man in his life. His father, who never said die and refused to give up on him. What an amazing man. Talk to us about him and the power of prayer.
No, definitely, he's one of the most magnificent and important men in my life. He was actually a teacher at the Morris Isaacson High School when the student uprising happened. But at the scene of the accident that I was involved in, my heart was actually stopping several times, and he said that the paramedics should not stop resuscitating me. And when I was in a subsequent coma, he and my parents, and my mother rather, had begun what I would describe as a prayer circle, where every evening at the same time, them and the friends and family and friends would all pray at the same time for my survival and my health. And that's when I came out of the coma, which was ironically, when I came out of the coma was on my mother's birthday.
Gosh.
what a great present to give to her for her birthday. And that's the importance of family in my life.
Your father, on 2 occasions during this horrific accident, and then when you were in hospital again, there was a time when you were in a second coma, am I right?
Yes, that's right.
And I think there was a suggestion by perhaps one of the doctors that they should turn off the machine.
Yes, that's true.
What did your father say? How did he respond yet again?
Actually, what had happened was that after a certain number of days or weeks, the chances of survival have tended to 0, and the doctors are supposed to just turn off the machines, or rather to get permission from the family to turn off the machines. As I was not coming out of the coma, the doctors asked my parents, should we rather just give up, put the young man out of his misery? And my parents, and in particular my father, said, no, my son is not dying here. And they kept the machines going, and that's when I came out of the coma on my beloved mother's birthday.
After how long did you regain consciousness when the doctors did suggest turning off the machine? So after, what amount of time passed before you regained consciousness again?
I think it was only several days.
Okay. You suffered something called retrograde amnesia. It's had a very huge impact on your life. You had a very promising career which was cut short.
Yes.
Talk to us about retrograde amnesia. What exactly is that? And how are you feeling about the fact that your career was cut short?
Well, I don't know if it's a lucky thing or an unlucky thing for me, but I cannot remember 3 years prior to my accident.
Up to now, as you speak with me, can you still not recall anything?
I have to repeat things that I've said 3 or 4 times, and I have to be told what has happened about 9 or 10 times before they go into my long-term memory. And retrograde amnesia means basically that after several days, my memory resets, and I cannot remember what has happened.
Over the past 7 days?
Yes.
And prior to the accident?
Don't be offended if I cannot remember having done this interview.
I certainly won't. This is an interview I will always remember.
All right.
Let's talk some more about retrograde amnesia. So you won't necessarily remember in 7 days' time that you've had this interview with me. But what about your long-term memory prior to the accident? How much of memory recall do you have of that phase of your life?
Well, I can remember things prior to 3 years before my accident. Those memories, because they are in my long-term memory, have stayed for the most part, intact. It's just everything from 3 years prior to my injury, which has gone a bit hazy. And that's what has to be repeated to me about 3 or 4 times, if not more.
Is there any form of therapy that can assist you in getting back normal memory so that I may sound facetious when I say this, but to enable you to have a more normal frame of mind and a life, so to speak? And I might also add here that I think your partner is absolutely amazing, but then perhaps there's something in it for her as well, because if you guys have a furious fight, you'll forget about it in a few days' time, and she can say what she likes to you, but then you won't have that memory recall, would you?
I think sometimes maybe she wishes that she did have that sort of memory issue, because as I said, I'm not a perfect person. I do mess up sometimes. But in terms of the other effects that my retrograde amnesia has had, is that, as I said, I cannot remember a lot of things, but I had a great medical team around me and a great physiotherapy team who have given me various exercises to do. The main doctor that put me in touch with them is Dr. Patricia Dorman. And I'm able to do various exercises to get my mind going and keep my mind alert. And it mostly comprises of doing exercises in puzzle books, things like that, and all that sort of thing.
Medical science has advanced by leaps and bounds from the time you've had your accident, which was about 20 years ago. Have you tried to look around for newer therapies that you could undergo to get your memory back and absolutely fully, so that you can lead a more, with due respect, a more normal life? Because I'm kind of wondering, with having this type of amnesia, does it not frustrate you from time to time?
Well, it is very frustrating, as you have mentioned. But I am currently getting back into the field of giving public talks, giving talks to high schools, where it's more important to speak to young people about the dangers of driving recklessly. The young people need to realize that they are not Michael Schumacher, or more relevant to them. They are actually not Lewis Hamilton on the roads, and that driving recklessly in the long run will land you up in one of two places, either in the morgue or in prison.
True. Or probably being a vegetable for the rest of your life.
That is true.
And you must be very thankful for the position you are in, because you could have been either dead or you could have been a vegetable, once again with due respect. But these are the realities of life. These are the realities of the outcomes of reckless driving and accidents. So I should imagine you're very grateful for being able to lead a very normal life with the type of support system you have.
Yes, my family have been extremely supportive of me. They've never given up on me, and have gotten me to a place in my healing where if I were to do it all over again, I would do it in the blink of an eye, because I'm able now to hopefully help others that have gone through similar incidents or have been affected by family members' incidents or people close to them whose experiences with motor vehicles have been similarly effective.
I know that you're working together with Thandi, who is your partner. You guys are working closely on a program to take to high schools.
Yes.
Are you planning on, and we need to go for our next ad break, so you can respond to me thereafter, but as part of that presentation of yours, are you going to build in an element of substance abuse? Because alcoholism and substance abuse are one of the biggest causes for road accidents and fatalities on our roads. But think about that. We'll get back to that answer right after the ad break. My amazing guest is Zwelethu Mazibuko, and I'm so enjoying this conversation because it goes straight to the heart and it gives us some wake-up calls. And I do hope you're paying close attention and can share the story with your family and your loved ones as well. But don't go away. We'll be back right after this ad break. This time of the year, January, is normally the time that we are given the road accident statistics by organizations like Stats Africa or even the AA. And they are horrific, and they seem to get worse with every passing year. So what is the problem here? Are our cars too fast? Are the people on the roads way too reckless? Are people in way too much of a hurry in this instant age that we're living in, that they want instant gratification from moving from point A to point B, and forgetting that the journey, if you're going on holiday or if you're going to work or if you're going to visit friends, that the journey is part of your destination. Enjoy it. That is why you've invested in a high-powered, expensive, flashy car. Your thoughts?
Well, my thoughts on that are that fine, it might be fun or enjoyable to drive fast, but there's a time and place for that. And it's on a racetrack. Because you don't want to end up in a coffin or in a morgue, as we were saying earlier. And especially to young people out there on the roads, you're not Lewis Hamilton, all right? Keep it on the tracks and not on the roads. Because as I was saying, that ends up very badly. It either ends up in a grave or in a police station. So,
just as a matter of interest, have you ever met the person that landed you in this position? The person who drove so recklessly that night that has resulted in this human being sitting in front of me?
No, I have not met the person that put me in this position. I don't think I would be forgiving enough to look him in the eyes, especially because of the fact that he was extremely drunk on the night of the incident. And from what I understand from the police and the paramedics, it was not his first time being involved in that sort of an accident. He just seemed to have enjoyed driving drunk, and I don't know for a fact. This is just what I've been told.
I know you have a brother who is a lawyer. I'm not quite sure which field of law he practices, but I'm wondering if you've had discussions with him regarding drunk drivers. Should their penalties not be more severe than they currently are? They get off scot-free. They've maimed people, they've killed people, they've taken away breadwinners from families simply because of their drunkenness, recklessness, and because they think they are superheroes.
Well, that's right. My brother is an attorney, although he's a corporate attorney. So the discussions between myself and him are more in the terms of opinions coming directly from my incident. And as I was saying earlier, my personal view is that there should be much harsher penalties for being involved in or for causing a traffic incident, especially under the influence. I know, I have been told that in some countries you do get what is referred to in some quarters as a 3 strikes policy, where if you are involved in 3 traffic vehicle incidents, your driver's license is taken away for life, which is something I think should be considered in this country.
Half of the people in South Africa don't drive with licenses in any event. But I want to say something to you. I was in Saudi Arabia about 10 years ago,
Yes.
and I was a bit wary of the way the people were driving there. And the tour guide said to me, don't worry, as reckless as they seem to be driving, they won't knock you down, because if they do, the ruling in this country is they're going to have to support you for the rest of your and their lives. So I think that is something that we in South Africa should be looking at, because that would prevent the recklessness on the roads. I want to go back to your father. He sounds like an amazing man. He refused to let the medical fraternity give up on you on 2 occasions. At the accident scene and when you were in a coma. You also said he was at Morris Isaacson School when the 76 riots started up. But he's written a very profound poem, and it's impacted on you. Tell us about that.
Yes, you said that my incidents of almost dying happened on 2 occasions. So let me just say 2 lines of this poem called The Spirit of No Surrender. And it's a poem that he subsequently dedicated to me while I was in hospital. And it starts out saying, in the heart of a soldier, there's no surrender. Though the body says no, the heart cries never.
Profound. Beautiful. Does that motivate you? And surely, as strong as you are and as self-assured and directed as you are, with an amazing partner and support system that you have, we are human, we're fallible. And from time to time, we also kind of ask those questions: why me? I can't do this anymore. Is there help out for me? What's my future going to be like? When you have those moments, what is it that picks you up?
As I was saying earlier, I do have those moments of asking God, why me? Why am I the one that has to take up this fight to try and get people to drive more safely, to not drive under the influence? And God tells me, because you are strong enough to.
Wow.
And also, at times I ask, well, how long must I fight this war? And I get the answer, you'll have to fight as long as it takes. And that gives me some peace of mind.
I must tell you that there's a couple of verses in the Holy Quran where God, Allah, tells us, I will not give you a burden greater than you can bear, and with every hardship comes ease. So I know in our moments of weakness, that's something I hold on to. And I'm sure your dad's poem, the motivation, and I think there is a spirituality about you in your life because of your experience. What do you want to share with those young high school teenagers that you're going to go to talk to them about the facts of life and that speeding kills? What else are you going to say to them?
Well, what I will say to them is, as I mentioned earlier, that there's only two places where driving recklessly ends up. It's either there's three places actually. It either ends up in jail, in the morgue, or unfortunately
a wheelchair.
That can
For the
be
rest
one of
of
the
your
places.
life?
It can either end up in a ward, it can either end up in a morgue, in prison, or in a wheelchair, or some other form of hospitalization.
In a forgotten corner,
Yes,
in a rehab home or something.
yes.
And is that what you want for you from life? I don't think anybody wants that.
I think if I were able to add something further, is that young people, please do not be selfish. You're not just going to be affecting yourselves. You're going to be affecting other families out there. What you do on the roads, you're not just driving for yourself. You're driving for everyone else on the roads. The speed limits are put there for a reason. They are not the speed suggestions. And to the same fact, the person that crashed into me during my traffic incident or traffic accident, he was apparently extremely under the influence. I don't know how much he was over the limit, but he was driving drunk, to my knowledge. So please stay away from the bottle if you're going to be driving especially.
Let's go for our final ad break of the morning. We are talking about driving responsibly, because if you don't, you are going to be suffering those consequences for the rest of your life. You may be okay, but the opposite party may be in a wheelchair for the rest of their lives, or you will have deprived a family of their breadwinner. And I kind of wonder, how will your conscience allow you to live with that? Next ad break, we'll be back in a short while to wrap up on this fascinating discussion with Zweli Mazibuko. We're talking road accidents, we're talking about careless driving, we're talking about drunk drivers not even thinking about the fact that they may take away a life very selfishly, or maim and injure people for the rest of their lives. And what would that life be like? And are they ever made to pay the consequences of their very selfish acts? Welcome back. You
Thank you.
did indicate to me that you've never met the person that was the cause of your current situation, the accident, the trauma that not only you suffered, but the rest of your family as well.
That's more in my angry moments. I don't ever want to meet the person again. Although, in a way, I'm thankful for the incident because I'm now able to do more of the work that I think I was put on this world to do. And I would also not be with my current partner had this not have happened. So I think that's part of the things I take heart in and am thankful for.
So there's blessings in every situation. As angry as you are in the moment when you reflect upon it.
As they say, every rose must have some thorns.
Absolutely. And of course, despite all of the trauma, not only you, but your family had been through during this time, there is a lesson learned and there is a blessing. Let's talk about this very long journey of healing for you, physically, mentally, emotionally, and spiritually. It's changed you as a person. But let's talk about the trauma to your body and to your mind and to your soul. I see a huge scar on your forehead. I've also noticed that as we made our way into the studio, that I think you walked with a slight limp. And I hope you don't mind me asking such very personal questions about your injuries, because it's important for us to highlight to other people to be more alert when they drive.
No, I'm actually very happy that you did bring that up. The limp and the scar are points of conversation and conversation starters, which I'm glad gives me an in to tell people about the dangers of reckless driving. As I said earlier, during the crash, almost every bone on the right side of my body was fractured. And that's what caused the injuries and the coma. I have a scar on the right side of my face, and the people that were my friends would call me Scarface Tony Montana, after the character in the movies. Mm-hmm. I do have a limp, which is very pronounced now, and was one of the ways that the multi-drug resistant staphylococcus was able to infect me, because of the very severe fracture. And now, besides that, I do have other mental and physical ailments. The physical are the ones where now I have epilepsy and have to be around people that know me in case I have a seizure in a public place, so that people can see that I need to be taken to a specific doctor and that I do have medical aid and can be treated.
Does that restrict your social life, having epilepsy? Because we do know that when you have a seizure, you could injure yourself very, very badly, but it's also scary for onlookers.
Yes, that's true. And I don't know if that's part of the reason why I have very few friends now, because I would imagine that it's quite a nerve-wracking thing to know that this person that you are sitting and having supper with or just hanging out with in general might go into a seizure that could threaten their life. But currently my partner, she knows exactly what to do when I'm in that situation.
Do you kind of get signs or smells, that kinds of alerts you to the onset of a seizure? I've been told that certain people get a very tinny taste in their mouths, and there are certain signs. And if you are able to pick up on them, what is the thing that you need to do to keep yourself safe and not injure yourself by having a really bad fall? What do you do then immediately when you can feel or get a sign that there's an onset of a seizure?
Well, in the 5 seconds warning that I get before I have a seizure.
And what is that?
I get what is referred to as an aura, where it's a almost an out-of-body experience.
I've heard of that.
And then I lose consciousness.
Immediately, 5 seconds
Yes.
later. Very limited time to actually do
Yeah.
anything.
But luckily for me, my partner and people closest to me know that they need to, and I don't want to speak out of turn now because I'm not a medical professional. But
In your case, let's talk
my
about your
case,
case. What do they need to do? And
lie
what
me-
do they do?
they line me on my side so that there's little chance of me choking on my tongue, and gives them time, or gives the medical professionals time to show up and resuscitate me if need be, or make sure to get a line into my throat so that I can breathe. And
It's scary, isn't it? Scary for you and for the onlooker.
since I know that death is very peaceful, I am not particularly scared or fazed by it. I know that we are all going to a better place if we are obeying God and, well, not that I have been a God-fearing man my entire life. I'll be the first one to say that I haven't
But
been.
since your accident, have you become more spiritual?
I have become more spiritual since my accident. I have begun praying and praying a lot more than I used to. And in fact, my family has become a lot more of a praying family. And as I said, they began a prayer circle every day and every night.
So I also understand that you've got to be very careful when how you walk, because should you have a fall, apart from the epilepsy, if you should just trip and have a fall, that could be quite devastating for you. Why is that?
Yes, I actually ended up falling not too long ago in the past year, where I took a misstep and ended up falling on the leg that had been fractured prior. And I had been warned before that if I ended up fracturing that leg again, I ran the risk of having my leg amputated, which I was very blessed to still keep the leg after this time. So that is one of the effects of my accident. And now I have to be constantly monitored that I'm not in a dangerous situation and that I'm not walking on any slippery surfaces.
So people around you are very
Yes.
cognizant of a safe space or an area for you to walk in.
That's true.
Shortly after your accident, once you regained consciousness and you were in rehabilitation, how incapacitated were you at that point in time, physically and mentally, as compared to this amazing man sitting in my presence, sharing his journey, the journey of rehabilitation, with us today on Hilaal TV?
Oh, Julie, you've taken me to a very painful place now.
I'm sorry.
Okay.
But I think it's so important for people to understand.
Well, as I said earlier, or as you said, before the accident and during the time before my accident, I actually used to be a television presenter on one of the major 24-hour news channels. So I was in front of the camera. I had to maintain a certain look. So I used to run every morning just to maintain physical fitness and a physical look. Now, because my leg was broken in almost 4 places, I couldn't run anymore. And mentally, I had to learn how to read and write again
All
from
over
scratch
again.
and how to do maths again. And that's to say nothing of the psychological damage that I took.
Regarding the reading and writing,
Yes.
where are you now? Have you mastered that all over again? Or are you still in the process of more learning, ongoing learning?
Well, as I said previously, I do keep my brain mentally alert by doing crossword puzzles and other maths problems, other maths games rather. And aside from that, everything that was in my long-term memory is pretty much still intact.
It's just short-term memory that's
Yes.
impacted. Okay, it's time for us to wrap up. Your words of caution and good advice to all the people watching us this morning. What is it that you want to say to them about your accident and moving forward?
Well, moving forward, I'd like to say that people mustn't give up after they've had an accident. You're only as strong as you choose to be, and God will never give you more of a burden than you can take.
Absolutely, exactly what I shared with you a minute ago. God bless. Stay strong. You're an amazing human being, and we do hope you continue touching lives with your story in a very, very positive way. Thank you for being my guest on the show this morning. Thank you for sharing. And that's where we leave it. Thank you indeed. I was quite moved by the story being shared by Zwelethu Mazibuko, an amazing man, and lots of lessons for you and I. And let's be more mindful of the people around us whilst we're walking, driving, interacting, whatever we're doing in our everyday interactions with our fellow human beings. Let's just spread the love, the care, and the respect. So from me, let's wrap up till the next time. As always, thank you for your company on the show today. Assalamu alaikum and Khud Hafiz.